Listen carefully, because what you're about to read was never meant to reach the public. Not in 1947, not in 1977, and certainly not now. For more than half a century, the United States government quietly buried one of the strangest, most improbable episodes in American history. An event documented in sealed memos, censored testimonies, and a set of missing archives that disappeared before Congress could even review them. This is the story of Shadow Point, a remote American outpost that officially did not exist, and the team of scientists and soldiers whose final transmission shook the Pentagon to its core. The strange transmission. It began at 3:14 a.m. on February 9, 1952. Cold War tensions were at a boiling point. Nuclear fear stained every newspaper headline. Every radar station from Alaska to Florida was on edge. At exactly 3:14 a.m., Project Blue Sentinel, a high-security signal monitoring facility in Nevada, recorded a strange burst of radioactivity. Not Soviet, not civilian, not atmospheric, something else. A young analyst named Walter Briggs, only 23 at the time, was on night shift. He logged the event automatically. Then he froze. The coordinates embedded in the signal were impossible. They pointed to Shadow Point Research Base, a secret installation in northern Montana that had been shut down 3 years earlier after a containment failure the government never explained. And the message itself? Just 6 words encoded in a military cipher that hadn't been used since World War II. It has awakened. Seal the vault. Briggs didn't even understand the full meaning of the code phrase. Only a handful of intelligence officers in Washington would. But he understood enough. Shadow Point was dead. No radio equipment was supposed to exist there. No personnel were assigned to the base. The last official record stated the facility was permanently evacuated after the winter of 1949. Yet something, or someone, sent a message. And the worst part? The code had been authorized using the clearance ID of Dr. Adrian Kessler, the base's former chief scientist. But Dr. Kessler had been declared dead for 3 years. To understand the panic that followed, you must understand what Shadow Point actually was. During World War II, the U.S. military launched an intelligence race against Nazi Germany, not just for weapons, but for knowledge. The Third Reich was obsessed with ancient texts, relics, and obscure sciences, anything that could provide even the slightest strategic advantage. CIA records, released decades later through FOIA, revealed that both sides were investigating anomalous biological specimens discovered in Siberia during the early 1900s. Creatures preserved in ice that didn't match any known species. Organisms that displayed properties far beyond conventional biology. The Soviets believed they were prehistoric. The Germans believed they were something else entirely. The Americans weren't sure. But after 1945, the United States recovered several crates of German research notes labeled Projekt Morgenstern, Phase 3, Project Morningstar, Phase 3. Most of it was delusional pseudoscience, but a few sketches and observations were chillingly precise, including one line written in a mixture of Latin and German: Dormit sub glacium, donec vocetur. It sleeps beneath the ice until it is called. Shadow Point was created in 1946 to investigate the recovered specimens, and inside its underground section, Vault C-17, they stored the only surviving biological sample, an organism frozen solid, an organism that, according to every scientist who studied it, was not dead, just dormant. Dr. Adrian Kessler wasn't a typical government scientist. He had been a rising star in pre-war anthropology and a respected figure in early paleobiology. But after witnessing Nazi experiments firsthand while assisting Allied interrogations, something changed in him. He warned the Defense Department repeatedly, "The thing you recovered from Morgenstern is not a fossil. It is a warning." He pushed for the vault to be sealed, the sample destroyed, the research abandoned entirely. But the Cold War left no room for caution. Shadow Point was built deeper and more secure than even the Manhattan Project labs. And Kessler was placed in charge, not to stop the research, but to advance it. The vault was his design, the protocols were his design, and some believe the final fail-safe message, the one Briggs intercepted, was written by Kessler himself.
According to declassified documents, Shadow Point shut down in December 1949 after a structural collapse. All personnel were evacuated. Dr. Kessler died shortly afterward from cardiac complications. But field logs, preserved by accident in the National Archives, tell another story. Personnel reported unexplained temperature drops inside the vault. Equipment began malfunctioning without cause. Several guards resigned after experiencing auditory hallucinations. And one technician filed a report stating he saw movement inside the ice. Kessler insisted the sample should be destroyed immediately. Washington refused. 3 weeks later, the base was closed. Unofficially, this was the last memo Kessler sent before his death. "You are not containing it. You are disturbing it." The Pentagon woke before dawn. Orders flew across departments. At 6:45 a.m., a covert team was assembled at Malmstrom Air Base. Their mission was simple. 1. Reach Shadow Point. 2. Recover all surviving data. 3. Seal or destroy the vault. 4. Determine who sent the transmission. Among the team was an Air Force captain named Elias Turner, whose classified diary would later become one of the most important pieces of evidence in this entire event. He wrote, "We were flying into a ghost, a place the government wanted erased, but something inside it was still alive. The flight to the forbidden zone. The transport plane sliced through a pale winter sky. Montana below looked endless, white, dead. But as they approached the old Shadow Point region, Turner noticed something strange. Large sections of forest had collapsed. Trees snapped like matchsticks. Snow patterns swirled unnaturally. And the closer they approached, the colder the air became. Not ordinary cold, a biting, unnatural cold that crept into the lungs and froze eyelashes. Turner wrote, "The temperature dropped 15 degrees in less than a minute. The crew thought it was a mechanical fault. I didn't." By the time they landed at the abandoned airstrip, all instruments were misfiring. Compasses spun. Radios crackled with static bursts that didn't follow atmospheric patterns. One engineer said it reminded him of bioelectric interference, the kind produced by certain deep-sea organisms that generate electromagnetic fields. But nothing on land should produce anything like that.
The entrance to the old facility stood half buried in ice and snow. The metal blast doors were warped, not outward, but onward, as if something had pulled them from the inside. No footprints, no signs of animals, no vehicle tracks. And yet, the power indicator above the service tunnel glowed faintly, green. The base had power, and someone, or something, had turned it on. Turner described the moment the team stepped inside. The air felt wrong, like the atmosphere itself was thinner. And I swear, At the moment my boot touched the floor, I heard something. Not a voice, a vibration, like a deep chord echoing through the metal. Lights flickered. Emergency generators hummed below. The only way that could happen is if someone manually restarted them. The team descended deeper. They passed the abandoned barracks, the frozen laboratory wing, the ruined observation deck, and finally, the reinforced steel corridor leading to Vault C-17. The temperature dropped with every step. By the time they reached the vault door, frost coated their eyelashes. Turner's final line in Chapter 1, "We reached C-17 at 11:02 a.m. The door was open, and the ice block inside, the one described in every file, the one that was supposed to be sealed forever, was empty." The vault door was never supposed to open again. It weighed nearly 9,000 pounds, reinforced with military-grade tungsten steel, built to withstand explosions, radiation, and even intentional sabotage. Yet there it stood, gaping open like a mouth frozen mid-scream. Captain Elias Turner felt the temperature drop so fast it almost emptied his lungs. Frost crept across his gloves as he reached for the doorframe. There were no signs of forced entry, no scorch marks, no blast residue, no tool scratches. The door had been unsealed from the inside. The empty chamber. Their flashlights scanned the vault. The space was cavernous, almost cathedral-like, with steel walls and condensation dripping in perfect, unnatural symmetry. But the most chilling sight was at the center. A massive cryogenic containment pillar stood upright, its inner glass chamber fractured in long, vein-like cracks. White vapor curled off its surface, drifting like smoke across the floor. Inside the cracked chamber was nothing. The sample taken from the German Morgenstern project, the organism frozen for thousands, perhaps millions of years, the specimen Adrian Kessler warned them about, was gone. One of the soldiers whispered, "Maybe the ice melted." But the idea died instantly. It was impossible. The vault's internal temperature was still minus 43 degrees Celsius, perfectly preserved, artificially stabilized. Turner bent down and examined the platform. The ice hadn't melted. The ice had broken from within, as if something pushed outward, something alive. Sergeant Hale, the team's tracking specialist, moved closer to inspect the floor. His breath hung like fog in the cold, forming pale halos around the flashlight beam. Turner noticed his sudden stillness. "Turner, what is it?" The sergeant didn't respond at first. He crouched lower. He touched the frost. Then he whispered, "There's a footprint." Everyone circled around. It wasn't human. It wasn't animal. And it wasn't like any prehistoric creature ever documented. 3 elongated digits, a fourth, smaller spur at the back, a deep, heavy imprint as if something weighed far more than its size implied. Most terrifying of all, the footprint was warm enough to have partially melted the frost beneath it. Hale swallowed. This was made recently, very recently. Turner's throat tightened. How recent? Hale's face went pale. Minutes, maybe less. Before anyone could move, the emergency lights flickered, buzzing, popping. A surge of static washed through the room like invisible lightning. The intercom, dead for 3 years, crackled to life with a screech that made everyone cover their ears. A voice spilled through the speakers, warped, distorted, layered with static, but undeniably human. "Seal the vault." Turner froze. The team looked at each other. It was the same voice from the original transmission. Dr. Adrian Kessler's voice. But Kessler had died in 1949, right? The intercom screeched again, this time deeper, like multiple overlapping frequencies. "It is not what you think. Seal the vault." Then silence. The light stabilized. The intercom went dead once more. Turner felt his pulse pounding through his gloves. If Kessler was dead, who just spoke? Or worse, what just spoke using his voice? Lieutenant Alvarez, stationed by the hallway, suddenly yelled, "Captain, you need to see this!" Turner rushed over. On the wall outside the vault, someone, or something, had carved words into the metal with incredible force. The gouges were deep, jagged, almost claw-like. 4 words: "Don't wake what sleeps." The lettering style wasn't Kessler's. It wasn't human handwriting at all. Sergeant Hale stepped back. "Whatever left that is still in here with us."